Your biggest nightmare client.
Oh, man.
Can you remember them, and can you share a bit of the story? The biggest nightmare.
Is he here? This is where you're going to be mad. But we did not sign a contract because we had this agreement, and it was supposed to be a kitchen. Long story short, it ballooned, and we did about $1 million worth of work. He said to my super one day, he goes, "Hey, I know how you got your contracts written. I'm gonna sue you and put you out of business."
This episode of Professional Builders Secrets is brought to you by Apparatus Contractor Services. Apparatus provides full scope, end-to-end QuickBooks precision construction accounting and CFO services for residential builders. If you feel like you can't completely trust your weekly and monthly financial reports, or you feel like you're flying blind, Apparatus will rebuild and operate your QuickBooks accounting system and give you precision construction accounting capability you can trust. Learn more at apparatusteam.com or on the APB Rewards Partner Directory.
Professional Builder Secrets podcast live at the IBS.
Yeah.
I have the man of the hour. I have the celebrity guest to talk to.
Yeah.
Nick Schiffer, welcome. Nice to have you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate being here.
I love being here with you. Being at IBS with you is special. Because it's been the one place every year that we've connected.
That is
for the
very
last
true. Yeah,
3 years. So there we go.
I feel like we see each other quite a bit through the year, but through a screen.
Yeah. All right. So I'm sure that most people have heard the name Nick Schiffer, but
We can assume.
okay. Let's go back to the beginning. Tell us a bit about you as a human being.
Oh, wow.
Your origin story. Were you the kid playing with Lego? Building tell us a bit about that and how you got into this industry.
Geez, I don't know if I've told the story. Forever I was a carpenter. I was always playing with toys. There is a story I've told. I used to be at my grandmother's house, and she'd ask me what I wanted to do, and we'd always go down the basement, get tools, nails, and they were renovating their house, and she used to sit me on the floor. I was, I think, 2 years old, and I would just sit there and hammer nails into the floor over and over. I don't think I was happy when they finished their renovation because I wasn't able to do it anymore.
Right.
But from that point, every time I would go over there, we'd go to the hardware store and I'd buy a tool.
Okay.
But fast forward, like through my childhood, I was, my father owns a fence company. So, blue collar, kind of in construction. I was building, ramps for my skateboards and bikes, and I built a shed for myself when I was little for no apparent reason. And I was just obsessed with carpentry. Watching This Old House, there was another show called Home Time that I watched forever.
Yeah. And
I went to trade school in high school, focused on carpentry. At one point in school, I really just started helping teaching. Because I was obsessed with it. So I'd go home, I'd learn, I'd come back to school and help my friends and hey, this is how you do this. And I graduated, and my intent was I was going to go work. My mom really pushed me to go to college, and I applied for college and went for construction management and started, or what I thought was learning the business side of construction. And truthfully, college was kind of a blur, and I anytime I wasn't in class, I was working. I would leave. I didn't stay on weekends. I would just go work.
It wasn't a party 3 years.
No, Thursdays maybe I party, but Friday 8 a.m. class, and I'd leave and go to work.
Right.
But when I graduated, I went back to work for my dad. I worked for him for 11 years over the course of my life, and I got a call one day, and they said, "Hey, we'd like to interview you for a job." I'm like, "Oh, I'm actually not looking for a job." They're like, "Well, okay," and hung up, and then called me 2 weeks later and said, "Hey, we really want to interview you. This is for an assistant project site superintendent role for a big high-rise project in the city." And I live in Boston. Now I live in Boston, but I had never been to Boston before. We lived 30 minutes south, and I went in.
You'd never been 30 minutes north.
Not on my own at that point.
Okay, right.
Obviously I had been in the city, but I had never driven into the city, especially rush hour.
Okay.
So they were telling me to come in for an interview at rush hour.
Yeah.
And I remember I left 3 hours in advance, and I was sitting in the parking lot for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I ended up working for this big developer and was in commercial construction, worked my way up to assistant project manager, And we were part of a 32-story high rise that we were building. I was on the owner rep side, but I was doing all of the APM work, and I started losing the passion for
love.
the craft. And in commercial, especially high rise, it was so interesting to me, like in the ground, steel, precast, windows. And then we'd be putting cabinetry in that cost us $680. And I was like, where's the craftsmanship?
Yeah.
And so I started doing carpentry on the side. And it got to a point where it was not sustainable. I was working like ridiculous hours a week. And I finally gave my notice and said, I'm going to, start my own company. They offered me 3 months salary to stay. For a month,
right?
And I declined because I was like, no,
you'd had enough.
I have to commit to this.
Yeah.
And I started my company as a carpentry company. I thought I'd be, a carpenter forever. Yeah. I ended up hiring a couple people that were my friends. And then interestingly, social media, Instagram specifically, started taking off, and I started networking very quickly with other people that were similar and like-minded. And I started meeting those people, and then I started hiring those people. And when I started realizing that there's people out there that are either just as passionate and as talented or more talented than I started thinking about, what if I built a team of people like that?
Right.
So that was 11 years ago.
Okay.
And nowadays, we went from being a carpentry company to substantial remodel to whole home construction to now we're building, as you know, a $10 million spec house.
Beautiful.
So yeah, that's a fast track version.
Okay. So let's go down the passion side of that story.
Yeah.
It's more than carpentry, isn't it? It's the artisan, the art of working with timber.
It's not even timber. It's just, I like to build.
Okay.
A hobby of mine was building cars. And, when I graduated college, I had built cars and homes. And one of my brother called me one day and we were chatting about it. And he's like, you literally can fix and build the two most expensive things that we ever own. And he was like, which one are you going to pursue as a career?
Right.
And I thought it was going to be hot rods.
Okay.
And I was offered a job with this pretty prestigious shop. And when I got the offer letter, it was just like, I was like, I can't live on that salary. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I decided to go after home building and keep the cars as a hobby. But, nowadays it's not the carpentry. It's the problem solving. It's the pushing of, what is like, I think that in life, but specific to my industry, we oftentimes are, faced with a challenge. And we react to it with what comes first, like to us first,
naturally,
or the easiest, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I refuse to do that. Where my team will say, hey, this is how we're gonna do it, or it's gonna take 3 days. It's like, how do you do it in 2? It's like, we can't. It's like, what if I rip the side of the building off and put all the cabinetry in through a crane? It's like, well, that would be ridiculous. It's like, right, but what's the in between?
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's what I really have found a passion in, is working with people and, as employees, as clients, as architects, as partners that just want to really do cool shit with cool people. I can swear, right?
Sure.
Yeah. We're builders.
Yeah. Okay. So take us back 11 years. Do you remember your first job?
I do.
Tell me about it. What was it and how did it go?
I don't know how it went because I didn't know my numbers. It was a kitchen renovation for good friends of mine. I mean, generally speaking, I think it went pretty well. I was the only person. I was on site every day performing the work and organizing the work.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any trades or partners. It was like I was just figuring this stuff out
as you go.
Screwed up the building permit, screwed up the structural design, like made a bunch of mistakes, but got it done and they were super happy.
Okay.
And then I took on a full home renovation that was the architect of the high rise for my previous firm. And he was like, hey, I bought a house. I'd love you to do the work. And I recently brought that contract up to see like what it was.
Yeah.
I think it was like $160,000. I'm like, that was a 4,000 square foot house. Like, I don't know what I
What were you thinking?
I don't know what I excluded, but there's no way I made money.
Yeah. No, we have a number of clients who do that. They get to the final number and they go, "That's way too low. I've missed something."
I truly don't know. I don't know how I made money back then, but 11 years ago it was it was just that. It was I would do that. And it would immediately lead to another referral.
Right.
And I was just figuring it out. And I don't remember specifically when, but I do remember a point in my career where when I did understand the business and I did understand what it costs and what I should charge, I remember like losing a lot and losing a lot of clients. And I'll never forget, I had this client, Betsy and Joe.
Okay.
And amazingly nice people.
Yeah.
And they hired me and it would be like, can you install crown molding in this one room?
Okay.
It was these small projects, like one project a year.
Yeah.
$1,500. I was there for 2 days, whatever. And it was just one project at a time. And I remember they called me like, hey, we want to do the next bedroom. Like we want to do all new trim and a couple other miscellaneous things. And I sent them a price. And she said, hey, Nick, this is almost double what it was last year. I said, oh yeah, we're growing. So, I have a team now, they're great carpenters. And like, okay, we're going to look elsewhere. And I'll never forget how defeated I felt where I was like, I thought that they valued me and that they were like, I'm supporting Nick's business. I was so convinced of it. And then it was price. Yeah. And they were like, oh, never mind.
The sad part that we all run into in this industry is that most people are selfish. Yep. And their first desire is the Whiffam question: what's in it for me?
Yeah.
And obviously there. What do you think with what you've learned in those 11 years? What's the biggest misconception about running a building business that somebody maybe listening to us today is thinking about starting their own business? What is the biggest myth out there about running a building business?
I think there's a few, but I think for me, it was early on, it was just me. So I would charge, say, $10,000 for a job.
Yep.
And despite how long it took, at the end of the day, I still put 10 grand in my pocket. And I remember hiring my first employee and it's like, hey, 10 grand to do that job. And then no matter how long it took, at the end, it was 10 grand minus however many hours times his hourly rate, net me 2 grand. Oops. And I think that when you start a business, there is this, even today, like for who we are today, there's this understanding that we're not pricing based on who we are today. We're pricing based on who we want to be tomorrow.
Sure.
So, we're considering what it costs to do construction tomorrow, not today. And what I mean by that is like understanding like who are the people that we want in place. Do we need a project manager, a site super? Do we not have them now, but should we for this type of project? Where it's like owner operators, I think, one of the biggest benefits from the client's perspective is an owner operator can be real lean, have real small overhead.
Yeah.
You want to talk about like a cost plus scenario, but it's like, they can be operating at a 10% fee. They can be operating less.
Yeah.
And they're making a great living because they have no overhead. And, and I come in and I have overhead and office and I'm like systems, and there's not one isn't better than the other.
Sure.
But if you're looking to grow a business and build a business and scale, you need to understand that those things need to be essentially in place prior to them actually being in place.
And I mean, you're saying there's no difference. I think there is a huge difference from a client's perspective of working with a builder that is professionally set up, that has that infrastructure, those systems, et cetera.
I would agree with that. My argument there is that it's not that it's no different. It's that one isn't necessarily better than the other.
Yeah.
Some clients don't need the systems, the communication.
Correct.
And are totally fine. Like I use the term cowboy sometimes. Like, cowboy could come in and get this job done and be the best builder. He could be a better builder than me.
Yeah.
But my experience will be different because we're managing it professionally. Correct. Like you're getting a regular cadence of communication. It's a very thoughtful experience.
Yeah.
And some clients value that and some don't.
Yeah. So this has probably never happened to you, but I'll ask the question anyway. Have you ever had a client ask you for something that is completely unrealistic or impossible? And if so, what was it and what did you say to them? And it might have been unrealistic or impossible in their home, just didn't work. How did you handle that kind of, you guys have to be crazy, but you can't say that?
I'm having a hard time like figuring out which angle we're going here.
Okay, I'm trying to get away from the standard. Let's talk about the building industry.
Yeah, but when you say impossible, like, are you saying like, hey, I need this done in 5 days, or hey, can you install a wine cellar that's flush with my floor?
Either or, whichever story you've got that springs to mind first.
I'll answer it generally first. We are absolutely like yes men.
Yeah.
In our company. Everything is yes. And because truthfully, like, I just believe that anything can be accomplished.
Sure.
And it's, everyone always combats it like, yeah, but everything, that doesn't, it's going to be super expensive if you do. Not necessarily. And, and my argument there is that oftentimes this stuff that is complicated or not status quo just takes more thought. And if you're spending the time thinking about it and understanding how to do it, there's typically opportunity to get
sure,
there. And
work it out.
It's a poor reference, but the reference there is that show, I think, Extreme Home Makeover.
Yep.
I made this comment to my team one day, and I was like, they build a house in 7 days. And one guy's like, yeah, but they spend 6 months fixing it. I'm like, 6 months and 7 days is still not a bad schedule.
Sure.
And I'm not saying it's a great house, but the point is there's always a way to accomplish it. And for us, like, we look at everything as an opportunity to how do we make this more efficient? So, we have a project right now, that very complicated frame, and I was like, I want to build the house offsite. And it's like, well, we needed to go through this incredibly thoroughly. The windows had 1/8-inch tolerances. It's like, we can do this, but we really need to spend time modeling the entire home. And we did. And that house went up in 6 weeks, and we had no issues. Like,
wow.
zero.
Yeah.
The steel fit, the windows fit, the frame, everything was.
And you did all of that off-site and then assembled it on site.
Yeah, we were digging the hole while the house was being framed.
Well, you don't enjoy risk at all, do you?
Yeah. No, I think my life is everything when it comes to building is risk.
Right.
And this is where I put this is where I gamble everything.
Sure.
As you know.
As I know.
We work very closely together. From you mentioned, like, as a human, right?
Yeah.
Earlier. For me, I balance this thought of, I don't know how long I'm here. Okay. So I'm going to take risks and go after what I want.
Sure.
And that doesn't mean I don't have anxiety attacks in the middle of the day, because I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
But I balance that with, I also don't know how long I'm here, but I need to take the opportunity when the opportunity presents itself. And the only way that fails, and I'll get to the failure in a minute, the only way that fails is if I quit.
Sure.
And
never give up.
The example of that is, I'm building this house that is going to go to market close to double what the bank tells me it's worth, and I'm going to sell it. And I get what if you don't? And it's like, well, then I gave up.
Yeah,
true. Like, what do you mean? And I'm not saying giving up is wrong. I think
Sure.
that there's a lot of negative connotation around giving up and changing and stopping.
Sure.
Everyone's like, if you give up, you're a failure. It's like,
no,
not necessarily. And it's also like, maybe you just want to do something different.
Yeah.
But that house, if I don't sell it, it's because I've given up finding the one person that will buy it.
Sure.
Because there's billions of people, and there's someone that will look at that and be like, yeah, I value that.
Yeah.
It's not just me.
And I've seen it, so I know you're going to sell it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's a one of a kind. It's an incredible home. But as you say, there's some risk attached.
It's enormous risk
to that.
Yeah. And I think, like, I come to these conferences and my wife never travels with me. We have 4 little kids.
Yeah.
And I don't give her enough credit. And I'm going to.
Well, do that now.
I'm doing it now.
There we go.
If you're listening,
you couldn't do this without her, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we have, like, there's a healthy respect and understanding that, like, she trusts me.
Sure.
And sometimes she's like, just do it. I don't want to know about it. You do it. And then there's other times where we talk, and she's like, what's gonna happen? I'm like, I'm gonna figure it out. And she's like, okay. And I think that I wouldn't be able to do it without her.
Sure.
And I don't tell her that enough. And for whatever reason, now I'm getting emotional.
Okay.
Which I did.
Well, we've just told her, so you've taken a step in
Someone
that direction.
Tag her in this, please. Doug, where'd you go? But yeah, I mean, it's for me, like the other side of what I do, when I started my company is that I also want to help people.
Sure.
And, I was never shy of asking for help, talking to other builders, even now, like getting lunch with my competitors and like, it's like, I want to be a collaborator. There's enough out there for us to work together.
Yeah.
And, and then of course, fast forward, we start the podcast and it was my opportunity where it's like, as I grow and learn, I want to turn around and find the guy that's a year behind me.
Right.
Because when it was me and I was growing, I was looking at guys that were 5, 10, 15, 30 years ahead of me. And if I could have just talked to someone that was a year ahead of me, it would have felt more obtainable.
Right.
Where it's like you talk to someone that's 30 years ahead, it's like, man, how will I ever reach that?
Sure. But that's a lot more accessible. So it sounds like you've had people in your life around you that have helped you on the journey.
Yeah.
How important is it to surround yourself with people that stretch you, make you go to a level that you wouldn't otherwise have gone to, in your opinion?
I don't think I would. I think I mean, the most important. I think if you're trying to achieve something that is above what is considered typical or the norm,
yeah.
If you don't have some sense of community that offers even the slightest bit of encouragement, mixed in with the people that tell you can't do it, I think it's really easy to kind of fall into just like a monotonous,
sure.
Process.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I was driving and we were facing some pretty big challenges with one of our projects in terms of the financing. And I was driving and a friend was with me, and I think we had the radio off and we just weren't talking. And I looked at him and I said, I get it. I understand why people give up, because it would be so easy.
Oh, of course.
I could just stop.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I could just stop doing what I'm doing and just do something normal. And I wouldn't be shaking right now. I would feel more comfortable. And he's like, are you thinking about giving up? I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I can
understand.
I can understand why.
Yeah.
And again, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just, I'm not wired that
Sure.
way.
Sure.
It's like the moment I'm constantly moving the goalpost where it's like, 10, 11 years ago, I was thinking I'd love to make $100,000 a year.
Right.
And it's like, and then it was like, I'd love to do $500,000 worth of work a year.
Yeah.
Like, and it just can continue to compound. And, for me, I think that's where I need to balance better, in the sense of like, I'm constantly moving that goalpost, but I don't reflect a lot.
Sure.
So every once in a while, I'm kind of reminded to like look back and say, hey, Facebook's great about that.
Yeah.
Because I've posted so much on social
media. They keep reminding you.
Hey, 8 years ago, you were building sheds. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Okay. I mean, we haven't made any secret of the fact that you and I work together pretty closely. Yeah. You said that you went to college, you did a construction management degree. What have we been able to add that wasn't there from all of your other experience?
Well, first and foremost, I wrote this article on LinkedIn about college. And I think I wrote college sucks.
Okay.
And
that's what I like about you, is the subtlety that comes with you.
Oh, very subtle. Yeah. Yeah. But for me, it did suck. Like I didn't leave there feeling as though I knew anything.
Right.
Like, or knew more.
Right.
And not because I went in there knowing anything. I felt as though it was just this like check of a box.
Yeah. And it sounds like, I threw the did you party at you and you said no a little bit, but you were a serious student. So it wasn't like you wasted your time there.
Yeah. I'm certainly not like an A student.
Sure.
But I'm also not like someone that didn't care. Like I wanted to pass and I wanted to get a degree. Yeah. And people are like, do you regret going to school? I'm like, well, no, like it awarded me the job, which I met my wife at. And like, so like, how could I regret that? Yeah. But I learned far more when I was in commercial construction and learned that process and at massive scale, like $180 million job. I'm signing change orders for, $1 million. Like it's $1.
Yeah.
But fast forward to, us working together, and I said this over there, it's like, I reached out because I wanted to scale, and I'm an idea guy. I'm a visionary. I think of crazy stuff. I research stuff. I'm like, this would be awesome. And I just want to throw it to someone and have them do it.
Yeah.
So when we started talking, I had all of these ideas for the company, and it would be like I had 6 browsers open on my computer, and it's like, I'm working on this, and then I'm like, wait, I'm going to go work on this one. And I couldn't focus. So I made this, I compared it to, having like 7 soccer balls on a field, and I want to get all of them across the field, and I'm kicking one at a time a little bit, where it's like, I should just focus on one and get it all the way across the field.
Sure.
And so that was what made me reach out to you. Is like, Andy, this is what I want to accomplish. I need structure. I'm a guy that if I have a to-do list, I'll go through and I'll get everything on my to-do list. If I have stuff to do and I don't have it in front of me, it never gets done.
Right.
And I can't prioritize.
Sure.
So that's why we started working together, and transparently, like, I quit on you.
You did.
And I was like, I can't do this. I don't have the time. And then I joined another group, and I'm like, they're going to do it better. And then
they didn't.
And then I was like, Andy, please let me back in. And we've been working ever since, and we have made really great progress. And I brought my team along, and now
I'm devastated that they're scared of me.
I'm scared of you.
I can't watch a whole episode of Little House on the Prairie without crying. How can anybody be scared of me?
Well, we've never seen you cry.
Yeah. All right. We need to watch a Little House on the Prairie together, and then you'll see it.
I don't know if I've ever seen that movie. No, I think what I mean by that, and it's the same for me, it's like, when I go into a meeting with you, like, it's business. It's like, we shoot the shit for a minute, and then it's like, hey, Andy, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm struggling with. And you're like, yeah, lock in. This is what we're going to do.
Right.
And, and we make progress every week. And it's, for me, my biggest thing forever was like, I just want a dashboard.
Yep.
Where it's like, when I'm driving my car, like, I know everything that's going on.
Yep.
I know how much fuel I have. I know how fast I'm going.
Yep.
And it's, I wanted the same thing for my business. And forever, like, we would try to build that internally.
Yep.
And as you saw, like, it got to a point where it's like this Excel sheet that, don't touch cell C. Because if you do, it will destroy itself.
Yeah.
And that really allowed us to really measure things.
Sure.
And you also really put on me the pressure to measure things that I didn't realize were important to measure.
Sure.
And even from like a marketing perspective, and it really like started uncovering some of the things that I realized that I just wasn't doing right.
Well, and that's a key point. I don't think there's ever been a time in your life when you weren't busy. But what we want you to be busy with is the things that are of value to where you want to take the business, not just busy for the sake of being busy.
You, a couple calls ago, we had chatted, and you said, hey, your focus right now is based on your lead flow, like this project right here, that you need to get that to a contract with all of your pressure, like all of your might, and find out if it's going to move forward or not, and don't focus on anything else. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And I push, and they were like, hey, we're not going to move forward. I'm like, gone.
There you go.
And instead, like, if I had, as simple as that sounds, right?
Yeah.
I would have worked on that, worked on this one, followed up with that one. And, and frankly, like, fast forward, we had a guest on our podcast just a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about pre-con, and I've preached pre-construction for a decade now, and everyone signs a retainer with us, and we have a straightforward process. And he was talking about how he was, struggling in business, and he was like, I need to nail my pre-con, and everyone's going to pay me for it, and we're going to move forward. And if they don't want to pay, they won't move forward. And I'm like, yeah. And I hang up that podcast, and I'm like, and I go to my lead, my intake form. I'm like, I have 8 people that I've been working with for like 4 months now that don't have retainers with me, because I'm like slowly trying to get them there. So I sent them all pre-con agreements. Good. 4 of them ghosted me, and 2 of them are moving forward.
Well, there we
go.
I'm
like, and I followed up, and they're like, oh yeah, we're actually not ready to move forward, or like, we don't really want to pay for pre-con.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was just wasting my time.
There you go.
So sometimes, like, my point with that is sometimes it just takes the kind of the conversation where it's like, let me project and get a reaction and realize that what I'm projecting needs to be returned to me so I can make, act on it.
There's good science in that. If you do some research on that, you'll see talking engages the prefrontal cortex.
It's like writing notes for me.
There you go. Exactly the same.
I can type all day, but I have an iPad where if I have to do stuff, I write it.
Right.
And then it's like now I know I'm doing it.
Okay. Now, we were supposed to wrap up in 30 minutes, but I've got two questions. If you're okay for a bit more, and if Will is happy that we run over time just a little bit, he's ignored. Kayla said we can do it, so we're doing it. Okay. Your biggest nightmare client.
Oh, man.
Can you remember them, and can you share a bit of the story? The biggest nightmare.
Is he here? What do you want to know?
Take us through how did it come about? What went wrong? What was the nightmare? And most importantly, how did you fix it? Or how did you get out of it?
How much time we got? All right.
Try and do it in 10.
COVID.
Okay, that word.
Everyone's like, oh, yeah. Never mind. I know the story.
Yeah.
We had 3 projects shut down in Boston, so we couldn't work on them. And I knew this gentleman, and I knew him kind of on a personal level, like kind of knew my dad.
Yep.
And reached out and was like, hey, I want to do my kitchen. And we were like, no problem. He's like, I love everything you do on social media. I want to be part of that. Like you got, everything was great. Designed him a kitchen, $250,000 cabinet package. Yep. We built the entire thing.
Yeah.
And every time we were there, let me back up. That's too specific. He owns a construction related company that is, and he's probably worth 20 plus million, maybe 50 million.
Right.
Does tens of millions of dollars in construction. First red flag.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. COVID. So then he was like, I want to do this staircase. So we designed this beautiful elliptical staircase. And he's like, I want to do this. And it just was scope creep.
Okay.
And
so you flying by the seat of your pants on this one.
I have a pre-construction agreement because we were designing the kitchen.
Right. But this didn't include staircase.
Well, no. This is where you're going to be mad. But we did not sign a contract because we had this agreement, and it was supposed to be a kitchen.
Okay.
But we were signing change. He was signing change orders.
Okay.
So we had something.
Right.
And long story short, it ballooned, and we did about $1 million worth of work. And then meanwhile, he had about 80 guys working in his house elsewhere.
Okay.
And doing miscellaneous things. But they were held to a much lower standard than us because we were perfect. And I don't really understand. I don't actually remember how it started failing. But he said to my super one day, he goes, hey, I know how you got your contracts written. I'm gonna sue you and put you out of business. My super call, he goes, hey, I don't know what he means by this. I'm like, I don't either. I'm like, but let's just get it done. We're so close. We got to wrap up and get out of there. And I get a letter from his lawyer saying, hey, we would like all of the financial backup for the project. This is cost plus. So I sent it to him, and he goes, cool. Based on your contract, you're supposed to be charging the labor cost because we didn't have labor rates defined, and you owe us $200,000. So I wrote him a check for $200,000 because he was going to sue me for it, and I was like, whatever. And I'm just like, no problem, sir. We're still here to commit. We want to get the job done. That's my fault. I got to get out of this job. I'm not going to fight. My guys show up. He screaming and yelling, literally throwing everyone off the job. And I'm parked in the driveway, and he calls me and he's screaming at me to get off his site. And I'm letting him yell, and he stops. I'm like, can we please just finish the job? Super calm.
Yeah.
Doesn't let us finish the job. Then threatens to sue me because the project's on social media. And he goes, I never gave you permission to do that. My wife is being harassed at the supermarket because they know what the inside of our house looks like. So we removed everything from social media. And then I get a punch list of stuff that didn't get done because we weren't allowed to get it done.
Right.
And then months go by, and he's like, I want you to come here and walk through the punch list. And I'm getting to my favorite part. But we're walking through the punch list, and I walk in, and there's 1,000 pieces of blue tape on this cabinetry. It's all black cabinetry.
Yeah.
And he's like, this stuff's damn. I'm like, I have photos of your electricians laying on top of your cabinetry.
Yeah.
And it was just insane.
Yeah.
So his lawyer's there, and it's him, and then his owner rep. And they're like, this is deficient. Will you fix it? And I didn't respond.
Right.
And he goes, do you agree? I'm like, agree to what? He goes, fixing it. I'm like, I'm not here to agree to anything. I'm here to understand what the issues are.
Yeah.
And I'll formally address that.
Yeah.
And he goes, come here. And we go in the pantry. He goes, are you a fucking moron? I'm like, what? He goes, look how low the oven is. I'm like, well, we talked about this. We lowered the oven in the pantry so you had this eyesight of everything being like the same.
Yeah.
He goes, but look, when you open it, look how low that is. No oven in the world would ever be that low.
Okay.
So I had a tape measure and I measured it.
Yeah.
And it was 9.5 inches from the floor to the door.
Yeah.
And I walked in his kitchen to his slide-in range and I opened the oven. And it was 9.5 inches. And he goes, next thing, over here. And so
he was just completely unreasonable.
It was unbelievable. I mean, if anyone saw this project on social media, the craziest part we did is he had this 6x6 steel column that held up this 20-inch tall I-beam in the kitchen.
Right.
And he wanted an island around it.
Okay.
And he wanted Calcutta gold marble around it.
Right.
And I was like, that's going to look terrible with a seam. Can I do it without a seam?
Yeah.
And he goes, how are you going to do it without a seam? I'm like, and I gave him, it was like $15,000 more. And he goes, okay. I jacked the fucking house up, cut the steel out, slid the stone in, and welded the column back together and finished it. And it was like the most insane thing. Like we made a video of it, and everyone's like, "That's insane,
crazy."
But I know we're running out of time.
Fine. Kayla said we could go, so we're okay.
Months go by, like we're just not like no word, and so I'm sorry. I call my lawyer and I send him the report, and he's like, oh yeah, like he's got quite a bit here, and like I know who he is. Like he's not like he sues everyone. Like this is his thing. And he's like, what was the inspection like? I'm like, well, it was him and his lawyer. And he goes, his lawyer was there? I'm like, yeah, his lawyer was walking. He goes,
yeah,
he can't have legal representation. And if he takes you to court, he needs to hire a different lawyer.
Right.
He can't use. I'm like, oh, okay. So nothing. And that following Christmas Eve, I'm on vacation with my family, and on Christmas Eve, I get a letter from his lawyer saying, just a reminder, we plan to sue you. I was like, and I read it, and I was like, I'm upset, but also like, fuck you. And also like, I'm just going to ignore it.
Yeah.
And I ignored it.
Yeah.
And so I think I have a timer set in my phone for like the 7-year, like
warranty. Once the warranty period.
Once 7 years is up, I'm going to post all the stuff back on social media.
Yeah.
Which maybe I won't, probably not a good idea. But it's like every year on Christmas Eve, it's like, I'm like
another year down.
Yeah. So
he's never sued you yet.
No, he's never sued me. He stiffed me out of like 20 grand at the end, plus the labor that we missed on. Yeah. And his owner rep, who was like, he would flip flop. Like, I think he was so in bed with this guy that like when he was with him, he's like, Nick, you're wrong. But like when I was with him alone, he's like, Nick, like, I'm sorry. Just a belligerent individual. Oh, man. So yeah, I mean, that's my that's
the worst nightmare. Yeah, and you're still here, and you're still standing, you're still smiling, you're still doing great things.
Yeah,
so
because what am I gonna do?
Oh, exactly. All right, quick fire.
Okay.
In your opinion, with what you've seen in 11 years, the worst trade.
The worst trade?
The worst trade.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. Which one of you had the biggest headache with? Can you think of one that consistently
is a headache?
Lets you down?
Consistently lets me down. Plumbers.
Okay. Best snack to have on a construction site. Keep the energy up.
Steak.
Steak as a snack. Love it. If you can't afford a steak, what would be number 2?
Burger.
Burgers. Okay. If we were going to make a reality TV show about your business, what would it be called?
Oh God.
I mean, it sounds like Pimp My House with the rest
like
of your background.
I don't know. I'm not like, I don't know.
The Impossible. Mission Impossible.
Something about like, I want to like, ridiculousness is already taken by Rob Dyrdek, but like something along the lines of that.
And if you weren't playing you,
Yeah.
which actor would you want to play the role of Nick Schiffer? Yeah. No, of you in the TV series.
Oh, who would I want to play me?
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling.
Okay. Fair comment. Fair answer. All right. Well, just so that you know, Kayla gave us permission to go slightly over, which we apologize. Thank you to everybody that's been listening. Nick, thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure. Always. We'll talk again soon on the podcast.
Thanks, dude.
So that is Professional Builder Secrets live at the RBS. You'll see that we've got all of our different speakers up for the rest of the day. Feel free just to take a quick shot of that QR code. It'll give you the list of the people we're talking to. Thank you for listening.